بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وبارك على الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we began last week a discussion around al-hayd, the menstruation, and the ahkam that relate to this particular topic, the menstruation. And we mentioned some of the ahkam relating to it. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we hope that today we could conclude the discussion around it. Wabillahi tawfiq. And from the things we mentioned, first and foremost in the last lesson, is that the hayd, the woman's menstruation, prevents her from particular umur. And what were some of the things that we mentioned that it prevents the woman from? Entering the masjid. Sahih? The hadith was weak now. The hadith was weak. But we mentioned that the hadith had many different asanid. I'm the one asking the questions, I thought. Yeah, so the hadith has many different asanid. What did we say about that asanid though? The isnad, different isnads. All of them were weak. All of them weak. And all of them regarded as being weak to the extent that they couldn't strengthen each other. Now, okay, so that's not one of them, we wouldn't say. Well, Allah Ta'ala knows best. What are the things that could definitely be prevented from the nisa? The salah. Now, so we mentioned the salah, the woman was prevented from the salah, and so she was prevented from so touching the mushaf. Now, marital relations. Exactly. So, what she's prevented from is the salah, and is mentioned by Ibn Qudama, or wujubiha. So she's prevented from the salah, and also she's prevented from anything that, so it's not upon her to pray the salah or to make up that salah. However, the fast is in the scenario that she's upon the menses, then she does not fast. However, it's upon her to make up for that fast. Now, this is the difference. Now, what else did we say? Tawaf, performing the tawaf as well, whether she's on Hajj or Umrah. And talaq, what did we say about the talaq? Divorce. Now, so if the woman is on her menses and she is divorced and the talaq occurs, then it counts as a talaq. Now, however, it's la yajuz, it's not permissible, because it's talaq bid'i. Yeah, this is a talaq which is bid'ah, it's a talaq which is innovated. So, we say that this is a talaq which is impermissible, however, it still counts. So even though the person does, it pronounces the talaq in this scenario, it's something which is impermissible, but it still counts as a talaq. Now, what's another example of that as well? In terms of talaq, we discussed it towards the end of the lesson. Discussed that, but something about the talaq, mentioned something regarding the talaq. Exactly. That if the man gives it 3 times in one go, intended to be 3 separate talaqs. Now, then there's a discussion amongst Ahlul Ilm regarding it. However, that which is regarded as being the strongest of the opinions is what? That it counts as all 3. Now, however, is bid'ah. So, and thereafter as well, we mentioned when the bleeding stops, then she can fast. There's no what, sorry? No. No relations, and what else? And no salah. Now, so if she performs the ghusl, then obviously everything is permissible. But what becomes permissible for her to do once the bleeding stops is to fast. And what else? We just mentioned the talaq. Now, the fasting and the talaq. However, the other actions are not permissible until she has performed the ghusl. Does that make sense? Sorry. Now, and what's the proof that the marital relations are not permissible? It's mentioned by Ibn Qudam. He mentions as a dalil. The hadith. What's the hadith? Alhamdulillah. It's a start. Now, then what is it? What is the proof? What is the proof? The hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he mentions alayhi salatu wassalam, إِسْنَعْ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ غَيْرَ النِّكَاحِ. Alright, so to do all the actions other than a nikah. Now, a nikah here referring to the marital relations. And so this is sometimes you'd find that this word is used for marital relations. So, based on this narration as well, something we didn't ask last week, we'll ask now. Based on this narration as well, would you now say that the aqd al-nikah is la yajuz? That the aqd al-nikah, to do a nikah, basically do a marriage, whilst the woman is menstruating, would you say that this is impermissible? Because men regard as something else now. And so the intent is not the actual aqd al-nikah. To do the aqd al-nikah whilst the woman is menstruating, and this is permissible. However, you have some of the kalam from Ahlul Ilm where they would say that it is better not to. And it's preferred that they would do the nikah whilst the woman is not menstruating. Now, for what is the reason? No. Essentially, because as soon as the person has concluded nikah, the woman is permissible for him. However, due to that scenario where she's menstruating, she wouldn't be permissible for him in terms of relations, and then you've maybe caused yourself a greater fitna than needed. Likewise, this is why you find as well some of Ahlul mention that the person should not conclude the aqd al-nikah when? Ramadan. Now, for the same reasons mentioned, due to the fact that, of course, marital relations are not permissible whilst fasting. So, and we said, what was the least amount of time that a woman could be regarded as being fasting? Menstruation? One night, one day. And the longest time? 15? No. And what is the longest period of time, or what's the least period of time that can be regarded that she's upon, or she's found in the state of purity?
13 days.
Now, the 30 days between purity, and what's the most? Unlimited. Why? Why is it unlimited? Because due to pregnancy. No, due to pregnancy. But if the woman becomes pregnant, then there's going to be a longer period of time where she won't be on the menses. And what can occur with some women is that they become pregnant and then so there's no menstruation in that period of time. She has the child, and then due to rida'a, due to the scenario where she's breastfeeding, this makes it longer. This makes this period of time where she doesn't menstruate even longer. And then directly after that, she gets pregnant again. And so there's another period of time. So it could be a period of time where a woman, Allah Ta'ala knows best, could go maybe 2.5 years without menstruating. Hence why there's no upper limit to the time, where we say that the woman is menstruating or not menstruating. Now, so and as for the beginning, the woman that begins, so she's beginning the menses. Now, إذا رأت الدم لوقت التحيض في مثله جلست فإن انقطع لأقل من يوم أو ليلة فليس بحيض. And so this is referring to the woman or the girl that sees blood. So it's blood, and it may be a case that she has begun menstruating. And this occurs, and so in this scenario, Ibn Qudama mentions Jalasat. She sits. But does it literally mean she sits? Or it literally means that she sits. But does it mean that she sits in terms of the text? We say Jalasat in this scenario. That if she begins to bleed, then she just sits down. Is that what it means? So she sees blood. It says that she sees blood. Now, does it literally mean she sits down? No, okay. فَمَا مَعْنَى جَلَسَتْ. What does he intend here by جَلَسَتْ? Rahimahullah. Sorry? Okay, so why does it say jealous? What does it mean here? On the toilet, no. She stops, which is wajib now. So essentially, jealousy is kinayatan an al-raha, yani she takes some rest, if you like. So she stops the action, or she stops continuing to go on to pray and relax with that. So what is wajib upon her, she stops that. Now, she stops that due to the fact that she's not aware of whether this may be her bleeding or not. Now, because remember, we're talking about the scenario of who? Who's this in the scenario? It's always going to be a woman. This identifies this, identifies that. It's always been women in these lessons. We're talking about hey, this woman. Now, so then what then? Who are we talking about, remember? But not anyone that sees blood? Okay, it's a woman, okay? It's a woman. What type of woman are we talking about, Barakallahu Feekum? Has the ability to menstruate, and so we're talking about essentially, Ikhwan, Barakallahu Feekum, the woman that has not menstruated previously. So she's beginning the menses. So this is what is done. And inshallah, when we go further, it'll be clear why we say that if she sees the blood, as soon as she sees the blood, she stops. And she stops praying, for example. So as soon as she sees blood, she stops praying. So, and then the Qudama goes on to mention, فَإِنْ انْقَطَعَ لِأَقَلْ مِنْ يَوْمٍ وَلَيْلَةٍ فَلَيْسَ بِحَيْضٍ. And however, if the bleeding stops for anything less than the period of a day and a night, then it's not regarded as being menstruation. Now, and it's rather what is regarded as being as dam al-fasid, or dam al-fasada. Now, so it's if now she sees blood, However, the blood stops before the time has elapsed of 1 day and 1 night, then she does not regard it as being the menstruation. So then what does she do? She goes back to the salawat. Does that make sense? No, because essentially she doesn't know. Now, so she goes back, but she goes back to the salawat at that point. So, Ibn Qudama goes on to mention after that, when جاوز ذلك ولم يعبر أكثر الحيض فهو حيض. نعم. And so if it goes over 1 day and 1 night, then it is regarded as being menstruation. So if the bleeding goes over 1 day and 1 night, then it is regarded as being menstruation. Why? Because we said the least amount of time for it to be regarded as being menstruation is how long? 1 day and 1 night. So if the woman now, she sees blood for the first time, and that time period elapses, then she regards that as being a hayd because it has fulfilled that minimum time period. It's fulfilled that minimum time period. Now, so thereafter, Ibn Qudama goes on to mention, فإذا تكرر 3 أشهر بمعنى واحد صار عادة والعبر فزائد استحاضة وعليها أن تغتسل عند آخر الحيض. Now, so if this continues for 3 months, now, so 3 months, one after the other, then this is what is regarded as being her hayd. Now, and it's regarded as being what is referred to as her ada. So this is the norm with her. So she waits for 3 months to see the manner in which the bleeding occurs. So she waits for 3 months. This is what was regarded as being the ada. This is what was regarded as being the norm with her. So, for example, she begins to bleed, and after 5 days elapse, the bleeding stops. Then I think the next month, the same thing happens. And then the next month after that, the same thing happens. It's now 3 months. At that point, she regards that time period of the 5 days as being her ada. As being the norm for her. And so this is important. Why? We'll come to it, but why do you think? Now, because the ahkam rulings will be based around if bleeding exceeds that amount of time. Now, if the bleeding stops before those 5 days, for example, فلا بأس. There's no issue with that. Now, bleeding may stop earlier. However, if the bleeding exceeds that time, which is now regarded as being her ada and norm for her, then there's other ahkam, and now it may not be regarded as being hayd, depending, of course. But if it has exceeded that amount of time, it may not be regarded as being that ada anymore. Or may not be regarded as being a hayd anymore, rather. And so, these 3 days are used as a means to determine what her ada, these 3 months rather, is used to determine what the ada is. Now, and so, thereafter, as mentioned, if she exceeds a day and a night, then the first thing that is regarded as being, and this occurs over 3 months, that is regarded as being her ada. Likewise, if she exceeds 1 day and 1 night, then upon her is after that day and night has elapsed. So even if it's just 1 day, 1 night, for example, she bleeds 1 day, 1 night, the bleeding stops. Directly after that, then she must do what? Make the ghusl. Now, then she must make the ghusl. Because now it's regarded as being a hayd. Because she's that time period, that lower limit in terms of the time period has elapsed. Now, and so thereafter she continues with that. And then, now, and so if now, for example, she has the ada, we mentioned that in the scenario she has the ada, the time period which is regarded as being, Allah Ta'ala's best, let's say 5 days. That's the ada. So 3 months has occurred, 5 days, 5 days, 5 days. Then that's what is regarded as being her habit. That's regarded as being the norm for her. Then she exceeds that. But if she exceeds that, then what? If she exceeds that, then what? Sorry? She checks again for the next 3 months. Okay. You don't agree? She checks again for the next 3 months. My brother here shaking his head. So, she's established her ada now. She's established a norm. For 3 months, for example, she's been bleeding for 5 days. And the bleeding stops. So that's the ada now, 5 days. On the 4th month, she bleeds for longer. 6 days, 7 days. Then what? So she will do what, sorry? Reset. Riyad's not having it. Riyad's not having it. Reset how? Remember, we're not talking about phones, okay? Reset, okay. If it exceeds day and night, okay. Okay, so she's had the 5 days, and then when she exceeds that, then you say it's a new menstrual cycle. Why is that a problem? There's a minimum what? 13 days. Because a minimum time period between two menstrual cycles, which is, as you mentioned, 13 days. So you can't have one, then straight away another one.
Does she just treat it as a continued one until it stops?
As a continued one?
Yeah, it's the same one.
Okay, then what's the point of having either then if it's continued then?
Others can be broken.
Others can be broken. But what's the point of having it then? If we just say any time it's bleeding, then it's the menstruation. Why would we need to establish an either at that point then? She treat it as a medical issue. Okay, then if she treats it as a medical issue, then what? Other than go to the doctor. Yeah, I need shar'an. If she treats it as a medical issue, then what? She make wudu for every salat. Okay. So she goes back to praying, you're saying? She goes back to praying. And they don't agree with that. So after 5 days, if she's still bleeding, she goes back to praying. And it says makes wudu after every salah. His heads are shaking, his nose everywhere. His nose everywhere.
Because you could say the fasting is okay.
Fasting is okay for her. But listen, the bleeding hasn't stopped.
But you said before, like, if you go back to it's just extra bleeding, but she holds her normal procedure.
No. Essentially, that's what it is. So that is the case. She does go back to praying. It does go back to... So it's now not regarded as being the head. There's a reason why she sets the ada. The ada, so her ada, her norm is set so that when she knows that this amount of bleeding is normal. Anything that exceeds that is no longer regarded as being the head. It's no longer regarded as being menstrual bleeding. Hence why, this is why, as we mentioned when we first began this chapter, that this whole bab itself can be problematic. Now, because the scenario that we are given is one which is quite straightforward. Now, where she has an either 3 months, and then the 4th month, she goes outside of that either. Now, so then now it's quite straightforward. Because in that scenario, if she has her norm, and she goes outside of that norm, anything that exceeds the norm is regarded as being al-istihada. Now, regarded as being what's referred to as istihada, which is irregular bleeding, essentially. Now, so it's irregular bleeding. So it's not regarded as being the dam al-hayd, when they have the menstrual bleeding, then it has all of its own ahkam. Then you have the irregular bleeding, which has ahkam as well. Because they are two separate things. Now, so you have the menstrual bleeding and the irregular bleeding. Now, and so then when it comes to this istihada, then what is upon her is to continue the actions of ibadah. Now, to continue the actions of ibadah. However, upon her, as Ibn Qudama goes on to mention, and we'll go on to read it, upon her is to wash the private parts and perform the wudu before every salah. Now, so perform the wudu before every salah. And so this is similar to who? The consonants. Now, so the one that has, as referred to, has the sensual bowl. Now, that's the one that has urinal incontinence, for example. So in this scenario, they take the same ruling. And so, istihada is, Shaykh Ubayd mentions, istihada, this irregular bleeding is of three types. So the irregular bleeding is of three types. And it's important to know, it's important for the woman to identify which of the three this one could possibly be. Because as I mentioned, that scenario that we previously discussed is one which is very straightforward. But we can see where, for example, it may be that it becomes more complicated going forward. So there's three types. The first one the Shaykh mentions, rahimahullah, is the istihada mu'tada. The istihada mu'tada. And this is istihada where it's continuous. So it's the bleeding, which is salim. However, it's غير عادي. So it doesn't occur at particular times. No, it doesn't occur at particular times. However, there's nothing along with the bleeding. And then you have the mustahad or istihada mubayyiza. Naam. And so this is the istihada where it's known, you know whether it is the head, whether it's the menstruation and not. You can tell the difference between that and the menstruation. So there's a differentiation between the two. And then you have mustahada mutahayyira. The third, mustahada mutahayyira. And the mutahayyira is where this bleeding occurs, يعني فجأة. نعم فجأة, يعني it's the bleeding that occurs and it is يعني sudden. So it occurs upon her in a sudden manner. And so this no doubt is something which is a cause of confusion. And so all of these are different types of irregular bleeding. The different types of irregular bleeding and how they can occur. Now, and as for what we mentioned in relation to the the one that has istihada and thus performs wudu. So they wash the private part and then perform the wudu thereafter. Then the proof for that is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's a narration of Lahmana bint Jahsh. حين شكت إلي كفة الدم. So this narration, she complained to the Prophet ﷺ about the large amounts of blood. And so the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he advised her to place the cotton upon the bleeding, at this place of bleeding. And so thereafter, he advised her to wash it away. And likewise as well, we have a similar narration which is found in the Sunan of Abi Dawud. The Sunan of Abi Dawud. And both narrations are narrations which are Hasan. So the first narration is one which is found in the Sunan of Tirmidhi. The Sunan of Tirmidhi, where Tirmidhi mentions that this hadith is Hasan al-Sahih. And along with that as well, he mentions that Sa'altu Muhammad, I asked Muhammad about this narration. Who's saying this? Tirmidhi is saying, I asked Muhammad about this narration. I asked Muhammad about this narration, and he said that it's Hasan. I asked Muhammad about this narration, and he said it was Hasan. Who is Muhammad? I asked Muhammad about this narration. He just says Muhammad. He doesn't say Muhammad bin Fulan, Fulan. He just says, I asked Muhammad about this narration. And he said it's Hasan. Imam Bukhari. His name was what? Ibn? No. Hamid ibn Ismail. And so, here, as this is a proof, or this is a proof, I guess, of what? Or indication of what? This him asking Imam Bukhari this about Tirmidhi and Bukhari. What was their relationship? No. So from the teachers of Imam Tirmidhi is Imam Bukhari. Now, from the teachers of Imam Tirmidhi is Imam Bukhari. And so, Imam Bukhari mentioned this is a hadith which is Hasan. Hadith which is Hasan. And so, in reality, there's actually a book of this. A book of hadith, which is an excellent book. It's called Su'alat al-Tirmidhi Imam Bukhari. Where it's a list of a large amount of questions, maybe not all, but a large amount of questions, which Imam Tirmidhi asks Imam Bukhari. Now, so it's just about maybe for this hadith, what is the rule of this hadith? What does it say about this narrator? And this essentially is really and truly from some of the gems in the books of hadith that you can find, where you have the imam, someone that becomes an imam, he may even be the imam at the time, asking questions to another imam, and you're hearing about their narrations and what their opinion is on the narrations and what their opinions are on the rawat, the narrators as well. And so this is no doubt ilm, which is thameen, knowledge in of itself within these books, which is valuable. And alhamdulillah, these things shouldn't be lost. These things shouldn't be lost. And shouldn't be replaced by podcasts and everything else that we have now. This is where you have the ilm. Now we have the questions being asked back and forth. Allah Ta'ala knows best. Now, and so this is the proof for that particular narration, Wallahu a'lam. And now, Ibn Qudama, as we mentioned, he makes the comparison between the istihada, the irregular bleeding, and the sensual bowl. Now, so the one that has continuous urination, and the rulings that are applied to this, and the rulings that are applied to that as well. Now, and so we mentioned as well that you have the one which is mu'tada, and the one that has the bleeding, and it is continuous and ongoing. Then if she has a continuous bleeding, how does she distinguish when it is time for her hayd? How does she distinguish the hayd from just the bleeding, the irregular bleeding? Go back to what we've discussed before. The time.
Between the last one and the next one.
That could be one, yeah. What else?
Colour.
The colour now. The colour of the blood, which is what? Now, so if it's what? Now.
Thin and raqiq.
Which one? Which one? Which?
The hamad one with the bleeding one.
It's all bleeding. Which one? It's all bleeding. Which one? Which one?
No, for the dark one for the beginner.
For the?
Beginning.
For the hayd.
Yes.
Now. So the darker one's for the hayd. Now. And then.
The light one for the when the
The irregular bleeding. Jazakallah khair. Sah. So you have the thicker blood essentially is what would be regarded as being the hayd, and the thinner blood, which is regarded as being irregular bleeding. So this is how she can distinguish as well. Now, so we mentioned she can distinguish it by what? Mahmoud mentioned. So the time she's bleeding continuously, so then she takes the minimum amount of time that can be between two periods. Now, or as mentioned, the consistency of the blood itself, which should be what and what? What's it?
Thinner for the irregular, and thicker for the menses.
So the thinner for the irregular bleeding, thicker for the menses blood, and darker for the menses blood. The aswad, yeah, exactly. What else?
Can you explain the word for English? Sakhina.
Fakhir is the thick blood, thick black blood. Yeah. The fakhir is the thick black blood. Now, and the raqiq is the thin red blood. Right. Now, the normality of the days. More or less, I just want to make sure you're right though. Can you explain further?
When she first goes on her menses,
Yes.
or previous period, she'll it'll be similar.
Don't feel no pressure. We've got time. Don't worry. It's
The
okay.
first few months will determine the normality of the
Assent. The first few months will determine the normality.
From there on, she'll compare it to that.
Exactly that. So, say for example, she knows that within those first 3 months, every 28 days, that's when she begins her menses. After 28 days, she begins her menses, or after 30 days, she begins her menses, and then she is afflicted with whatever caused her to have irregular bleeding. So her ad is established. It may be established for years even. And then, however, now she's afflicted with something that has caused irregular bleeding. What does she do? She waits for that time of 30 days to elapse. And she knows that every 30 days, that's when her menses begin. Then she will take the ahkam of the menses at that time. Does that make sense? So she may have continuous bleeding, not stopping, every single day. And what we mean by continuous bleeding as well, sometimes it may not be large amounts of blood, but any form of blood is bleeding. Any form of blood has to take some sort of hukum. So she has continuous bleeding, but she knows every 30 days this is when her menses begin. This is what she's known from before. Now, and so if she now has continuous bleeding, every 30 days, that's when she begins to take on the ahkam of the menses. Meaning what? What does she do? What doesn't she do? She doesn't pray, doesn't fast, these things here. Now, and then if she's still bleeding after, say she knows she bleeds every 30 days, and then she bleeds for a period of 5 days. Now, then when those 30 days are up, she takes on the hukum of the haid. She takes on the hukum of the one that is menstruating. After that, after 5 days, if she's still bleeding, as we mentioned anyway, then she's anything that exceeds that is regarded as being what? Irregular bleeding, istihada. That's regarded as being irregular bleeding. And so then she continues the hukum of the one that is not haid. Does it make sense? Jayyid. That's straightforward, inshallah. What about if she doesn't have an adha? Yes, maybe for example, it's some months is 30 days, some months 28 days, some months 32 days, some months ila akhiri. What does she do? Does she go off the the Hijri months? Does she go off the Hijri months? Meaning that she base it upon the Hijri months? Maybe. What else? Who else has a suggestion?
6 or 7 days. Keeps that 6 or 7 days.
6 or 7 days. Why 6 or 7?
That's the usual.
No. So, what about the time period between?
Most is 15 days.
So, most 15. And so the person goes upon. So basically, they judge it upon, as the Prophet mentioned, the ada of others. That was the general ada. Now, so she can't, because she doesn't have an ada for herself. Of course, that's Ola. What's first and foremost is that she judges it upon her own norm, because it's her body. However, if she's not able to judge it upon her own norm, then she judges it upon the ada that is generally known. And what is generally known, for example, is a period of sport, 7 days. Now, so she does it. So she will judge it upon that, because of course she can't go a whole period of just not praying. So she judges it upon the ada, what is generally known as the ada. Now this is also mentioned here by Ibn Qudama. So he mentions, وإن كانت مبتدأة أو ناسية لعادتها ولا تمييز لها فهيدها من كل شهر 6 أيام أو 7. نعم لأنه غالب عادة النساء. And so he mentions, rahimahullah, scenarios. So if she's just began the period, so just began menses, or she forgets what her ada is, or there's no she doesn't have any tamyiz, so she doesn't know, she doesn't have a particular ada, as we mentioned, then her haid, her menstruation, is regarded as being 6, could be 6 or 7 days. Now, this is the ghalib, this is the ghalib of the nisa. This is what is known from the generality amongst the nisa, amongst the women. So it goes back to what is generally known for the women, and not what is known from her. Why? Because she's not able to distinguish. So here, Ibn Qudama is mentioning, we mentioned the example, which example did we just mention from those 3? If she doesn't know now. So basically, if she's not able to distinguish, that's the last of the 3. So you have 3 examples. You have the one that has just begun, mubtada'at. So she's just begun the menstruation. Then you have the one which is nasiya, which is nasiya, she's forgotten her ada. And you have the third now where she's not able to distinguish an ada. Now, so we mentioned the example of the third. She's not able to distinguish an ada. Now you have the second, which is, or the first rather, which is the individual that has just begun fasting. This began the menstruation, sorry. So it's just began the menstruation. What does it mean that the individual just began the menstruation? Just started. So what then? When do we consider someone just started? For what period of time? When it's not been happening for 13 days.
It was never happened before.
Never happened before. So then when do we stop regarding that person as being someone that hasn't just started their menstruation? 3 months. Make sense? Why? Because 3 months is there to establish what? Determine what? The ada. So you determine the ada by way of those 3 months. So anything within those 3 months, so within those 3 months, barakallahu feekum, then she is regarded as being someone that has just started the menses, because she does not have an ada which is established. Now, and so then this is what these are the ahkam that will be used in that regard. Does that make sense? Yeah. Then you have the individual, the woman that has forgotten what her ada is. Now, it could happen. It could happen where she doesn't remember. If the last menstrual cycle, was it 5 days? Was it 6 days? Was it 7 days? How many days were between each menstrual cycle? No. She said no. And so in this scenario here, again, she takes the same ruling. Allah Ta'ala A'lam. Now, and then finally in this chapter, Ibn Qudamah mentions, وَالْحَامِلْ لَا تُحِيدْ إلا أن ترى الدم قبل ولادتها بيومين أو 3 فليكون دم النفاس. And as for the hamil, the hamil and a woman that is pregnant, then she does not have a period. Now she does not have a menstrual. She doesn't menstruate. Yani. So as for the woman that is hamil, she does not menstruate. And so thus, anytime there is blood, then it's not regarded as being the blood of menstruation. If it's established that she is pregnant, and then she sees bleeding, then she does not regard this as being blood of menstruation. Now, and then if the blood occurs 2 days or 3 days before menstruation, or before wilada, before childbirth, then it's not regarded as being the dam al-hayd. It's not regarded as being the menstrual blood, but it's regarded as being the blood of what? Nifas. Now, postnatal bleeding. Now, and so it's regarded as being the blood which occurs after the woman gives birth. So that's a short discussion around the menstruation. And again, we say it's a short discussion because there's so much more that can be discussed around it, surrounding it. Allah Ta'ala knows best. And what we will do, inshallah, is go on to the next chapter because it's a very short one. And it's the Bab on Nifas. So the chapter regarding the Nifas, the chapter regarding the menstrual, or regarding the postnatal bleeding, rather. So Ibn Qudamah mentions, هو الدم الخارج بسبب الولادة وحكمه حكم الحيض. And so it is the blood which leaves the body as a result of childbirth. As a result of childbirth. And it takes the same hukum, the same ruling as the ruling when it comes to the haid, the menstruation. Now, I said, what does it mean when it takes the same ruling? I said, stop doing all the same things that the woman that is menstruated does. That she stops all of those things. And so, now, Ibn Qudam goes on to mention, وَأَكْثَرُهُ 40 يَوْمًا وَلَا أَحَدْ لِأَقَلِّهِ. نعم. ومتى رأت الطهر اغتسلت وهي طاهرة فإن عاد في مدة 40 فهو نفاس أيضا. And so, the upper limit for the nifas, for the menstrual, or for the postnatal bleeding, is 40 days. Now, so 40 days is the upper limit for the postnatal bleeding. Anything less than that, and there's no lower limit. So, for example, a woman may have postnatal bleeding for 1 week, and then it ends. There's no lower limit. As for that which is the upper limit, and that which is the most amount of days, then the most amount of days it can be is 40 days. The most amount of days it can be is 40 days. And this is due to the hadith of Salama, and she mentions كانت النفساء على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم تقعد بعد نفاسها 40 يوما أو 40 ليلة. And so she mentions that the postnatal bleeding, women of postnatal bleeding, in the time of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, would sit and remain after their bleeding or during their bleeding for the period of 40 days or 40 nights. And this is the narration which is found in Sunan of Abi Dawud and the Tirmidhi. Again, the word mentioned here, taq'udu, to sit, essentially. But when it doesn't mean to sit, of course. What did you say it meant previously? To stop doing the particular action, to rest, stop doing the actions of obligation. So in this scenario, it's talking about the postnatal bleeding. And so they would, Salama mentions the period of 40 days. Salama radiallahu anha mentioned the period of 40 days. So, what if it is before 40 days? What does she do? She makes ghusl, and then goes back to the wajibat. If it's before 40 days. What if it's after the 40 days? We'll take the rule of istihada. We'll take the rule of irregular bleeding. Now, so if it's after the 40 days, anything that exceeds that is no longer regarded as being the dam nifas. It's no longer regarded as being the postnatal bleeding. Rather, it's regarded as being the irregular bleeding. And if it's the irregular bleeding, then what do we say? What is done with the irregular bleeding? Barakallahu feekum. To wash and then to make wudu before every salah. Now, the Qudama mentions as well, so that if she sees that she's become pure, i.e. the bleed has stopped, then she performs the ghusl, as we mentioned. She performs the ghusl. And she's now upon tahara, she's tahira. She's upon purity. And if now she does so, and then within that time period, the bleeding returns. Within that time period, the bleeding returns. Then what? Is the question clear?
Within the 40 days.
Okay. Khalas. I know it's getting late, don't worry. We're nearly done. Nearly done. Stretch everything and then get back. Now, so we're saying she has the postnatal bleeding. It stops. What does she do if it stops?
Returns back.
Now, makes the ghusl, returns back to action. Because she's upon purity. What happens if she bleeds again? It depends what time period. Okay. So then, it depends on what? It depends on what in regards to the time. The minimum time that could be haid. Okay. So if it's before then, so if it's before then, so it's regarded as being istihada. Okay. So the 13 days, so if it's before 30, say 7 days then.
So after 7 for 6 days, she treats it as continence.
Okay, she treats it as the regular bleeding, yeah? They're saying she treats it as irregular bleeding.
Or could it be return on the once?
Up to the 40 days, if it starts again, you just treat it as the postnatal bleeding.
Up to 40, she treats it as postnatal bleeding.
Then you would treat it as irregular.
Okay.
Or could it be something different? Because obviously it's not the same as the period.
Okay. So it could be her menstruation. Well, Allah knows best. So let's just sort out the answers that we have now. For them, Zola, Khair gave 2 answers, so we'll sort them all out. So the first answer was that. What did you say for that? So before the minimum days, that's one. So before the minimum days. So if it occurs before those 13 days, now, so if she starts bleeding again and it's before 13 days since she stopped bleeding before, then it's regarded as being irregular bleeding, is what you're saying. Okay. And then, Uthman, you're saying if it's within those 40 days, then it's still regarded as being nifas. Okay. And if there we said again after that it could be regarded as being her haid. Nifas. That's what Uthman's saying. They're different, yeah. So if she starts bleeding again, you're saying it would be the haid now. Okay. So essentially, or rather, Uthman's all mentions is correct. Is that it is the nifas. So if it's within the 40-day period, even if she's stopped bleeding and she's gone back to salah, fast and everything, now, but the bleeding starts again, and it's still within that 40-day period, based on the aforementioned hadith, then we know that is the nifas. So it still takes the period of the nifas. And so she stops praying again. So she stops all of those actions again. Now, because it's still within that time period. And so this is the general ruling when it comes to nifas. And Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala knows best. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم وصلى الله وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم آخر دعوانا والحمد لله رب العالمين. نعم.
If the person have like a kind of period and between her and her husband or between her time for the salah, if she breaches like for example when like the time of the period they join, or like in the period of time of Ramadan they join the relations.
Yeah.
Because I think there wasn't that question there. Maybe there is
The question, Afwan. I'm sorry, Afwan. Afwan, the question, repeat the question.
The question, for example, like it's never shown from here, but from the Sharia. They
Yeah.
have more explanation. If the person for example, is forbidden to join their wife with time of the period.
At the time of the menstruation, yes.
Yeah, if he does, what is going to be on punishment for her, or if in Ramadan time?
So if it's a case of the marriage relations occurs in Ramadan, then there's a specific punishment mentioned, or specific kafara mentioned. Now the kafara for that essentially is the fasting the free the slave, fasting the 2 months totality, and then also feeding for each of those 60 days. If the person's not able to do that, then he's free of any responsibility in that regard. But no doubt the person that does so is sinful. Now, this is also the same thing occurs. It's not the same kafara, it's not the same thing of expiation. However, no doubt the person that does so, if the person was to have relations with the wife while she's menstruating, as something which is manhi and something which is prohibited, then of course it is also something which is a person asked him as well. He's a blameworthy for as well in that regard.
So is that if you do by accident and like intentionally, like have relations with your wife?
No, if something's done by way of khata, then anything that occurs by way of khata, by way of error, then the person isn't taken into regard by way of error. As mentioned in the hadith of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is something which is the excuse from this ummah is that they fall into error. And the ayah as well, Allah Ta'ala mentions, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا أَوْ أَخْطَأْنَا. Oh Allah, do not take us into account if we forget or we are erroneous. So error is not in regards to that. No, Allah. Barakallahu feekum. Next chapter is Kitab al-Salah. As if we're going to do Kitab al-Salah, I don't know if not if ever, but we might go straight to Kitab al-Siyam as Ramadan is approaching. So we'll see, inshallah. We'll see we'll see what's best, inshallah. Huh? The women's stuff's over for now. جزاكم الله خير. بارك الله فيكم. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.